Hi, everybody, and welcome to the newest episode of the HubSpot Agency Expert webinar series. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined on the line today by John Gleason. John is the founder and president at Better View Strategic Consulting, and he's going to be speaking today about why clients do what they do and what this means for agencies just like yours. So over the course of today's webinar, you are going to discover what drives clients' practices and behaviors and learn how these factors impact how clients see, engage, and interact with agencies. We would absolutely love for you guys to interact with us and join in the conversation. So if at any stage you would like to ask us a question, please feel free to tweet us at #AgencyExpertSeries, and we're going to do our very best to get to those questions towards the end of the webinar. So John, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, David. Very much appreciated. And thanks for the honor to be a part of this expert series. I don't necessarily consider myself an expert, but I certainly have had a number of experiences that give me a lot of opinions about some things. So looking forward to sharing some of those. Hello, everybody. I hope this finds you well, no matter where in the world you might be sitting to tune into this. I wanted to share some perspective that I've picked up over my my professional life, and I'll talk a little bit about my background that kind of led to these observations and perhaps opinions. So the notion of why clients do what they do, one of the things that I have found in my travels is agencies spend a lot of time and energy trying to help themselves look different and look appealing to prospects and clients. But oftentimes they're not thinking about what really is driving and motivating and inspiring or frustrating their prospects and their clients. So that was kind of the impetus for creating this session, to provide some context. And I'll share a little bit more about what the heck do I know about clients, as opposed to what the heck do I know about agencies. So by way of introduction, I spent almost 21 years at Procter & Gamble. A big part of that journey was helping and being a part of the company's early stages to elevate design as a strategic business competence, not just a creative decoration station. The other part of that responsibility was I was responsible for leading and supporting our external agency relationships with respect to design, innovation, production, some promotion, some insights, and it's there that I started to collect some perspective on how agencies showed up to us, and perhaps how we showed up to agencies. So one of the roles I had was that of the wonderful embracing role of procurement, where I was supportive, I was helpful, I was empathetic for your needs as agencies, and at the end of the day tried to help you achieve your goals as well as our own. And insert quiet laughter here. And it was in this last role that I had at Procter & Gamble that I picked up a number of observations. I observed a number of frustrations, both on our side, the client side, as well as on the side of the agencies, because I think those of you with whom I've had the privilege and the honor to work, particularly when I was at P&G, I hope that you'll see that I truly was supportive of your needs and tried to be an advocate for you as an agency back in with our businesses. And these observations and frustrations provided some clarity and some opportunity. So about 10 years ago, I left P&G to start a tiny little enterprise. The way I describe it is I work at the intersection of clients and agencies. So my clients are large corporations who are both trying to elevate design more strategically in their business, as well as find the right agency cultures for their business and their business vision. And then the other side of that agent or that client relationships spectrum are agencies, where I'm trying to help you become more relevant for the kind of clients you hope to engage, and to become a better business in the process. And so as a part of this notion, there's not only why clients do what they do, but there's this aspect of why any of us do what we do, and in particular, in this case, agencies. And as a part of that, I like to describe myself in terms of these kinds of assisting roles. And at the end of the day, would prefer to be a Cyrano de Bergerac, helping you find the right answers, giving you the credit, the publicity, the notoriety, and the success, with the support behind the scenes, and more about being an aid or a guide to help you achieve your goals. So enough about me, and on to this notion of why clients do what they do. And in to great degree, why should you care? So as I go through this, I'd like you to think about your best and your worst client relationships, the most inspiring requests that clients have made of you, and perhaps the most ridiculous requests. And in doing so, think about what are the characteristics that were present. What were the attributes? How was the relationship that you had with those client enterprises? What were the circumstances of the request, or the inspiration or the ridiculousness, so to speak? What were the dynamics? And why do you think they were compelled to ask what they asked of you? And how did you react in those circumstances? And why? So all of these things kind of get at the underlying core notion, and you're going to see my little friend here screaming, "So what?" Because so what is an important question for you as agencies to ask yourself when you're preparing materials to try to present to clients, whether it's work, whether it's a capability presentation, whether it's an introduction, whether it's responding to an RFP or a pitch process. I'll share a bit more about what this "so what" characteristic and character looks like. So for context, everything that you see as the result of your relationships with clients or prospects is driven in action. And those actions are driven by a series of drivers. And so let me give you a little bit of a view into the client's world. The answer to why clients what they do what they do is quite simple. It's the notion of reward systems. Rewards drive behavior. And this is true of every action or inaction that every one of us do in any aspect of our life, whether it's what we choose for lunch today, where we might go for dinner, how we might entertain our friends. All of these things have reward systems attached to them, either positive rewards, reputation, credibility, or avoiding negative ones, fear, failure, things like that. So a big part, and I've kind of selected 5 key areas that many clients feel pressure to deliver under in today's business world. And there certainly are others, but these seem to be predominant and prevailing. There's this notion of speed. Can I be first to market, or can I be a fast second or third to the market, responding and reacting to competitive pressures? Can I figure out how do I gain an advantage through scale, growth, and use size or speed or density as a way of trying to drive some form of advantage for myself? How do I navigate the complexities of the real world in which I operate? Currency, volume, competitive pressure, technology, things like that. Innovation is the lifeblood of growth, and how might I as a client continue to drive that innovation for my own business? And at the end of the day, how do I accrue all of those things to create some form of value, whether it's financial value through sales, profitability, margin, things like that, whether it's reputation value, whether it is some softer sides of value, credibility, and trustworthiness, things like that. So simple. If you can tap into what is truly driving your clients and their business with their customers and their consumers, you stand a better chance of being able to serve them well and serve yourself well as an agency enterprise. The not so simple side of this is rewards follow a fairly complex set of dynamics. So let's go back to those same five: speed, scale, complexity, innovation, and value. They create a certain set of expectations on each person inside a business enterprise, and then ultimately on the business enterprise itself. Those business drivers become expectations with respect to my job: growth, share, profit, innovation, value, however those things translate. And then the real reality that most people, whether they be on the corporate side or the agency side, then translate those things into how they fit with my personal value systems. And these things are often not necessarily overtly talked about. The business part certainly is, but the impact of a positive or negative on my career is not something that's often spoken out loud, particularly between clients and agencies. How do these things impact my compensation, my bonus, my promotion, my salary, my ability, my mobility inside of the enterprise, my life? Do I try to manage some form of balance internally and externally, and then my value systems? And all three of these dynamics, the overt business challenge, the business objectives that are then placed on me as an individual and on organizations, and then how they translate into my world and my life personally, all become part of this complex algorithm, if you will, for driving the reward systems that ultimately create the behaviors that I induce into the marketplace. And so those things include pressure, certainly drives behavior. Think about how you and your business react when you're under pressure. Ambition drives behavior. Think about clients that have been particularly ambitious in their own career pursuits or their own initiative pursuits, and how that translates in the way that they've behaved with you. Uncertainty drives behavior. Procurement is a great example of intentionally disappearing from the marketplace in the middle of an RFP or a pitch process to create some uncertainty, to see who reacts in certain ways. Aspirations, challenges, fear is a massive driver of behavior, and particularly in large organizations. The fear of failure is an enormous driver for the initiatives they put into place, the way they manage initiatives, the way they manage relationships, impact on my reputation, impact on my career, impact on my own financial viability. The fear, and particularly fear of the unknown, in some cases can be profound, if not paralyzing. And so how do these things impact you as agencies and impact me or us as clients, if you will? I mean, all of these things with respect to agency relationships have a direct bearing. Agency selection. No one gets fired by hiring Saatchi & Saatchi, or no one gets fired by hiring Gray or Y&R. If you are a lesser known or, quote, risky choice, somebody inside of that client organization is going to have to advocate for you. And can you help them look good, and can you help them mitigate the risk or challenge? The next one is in my opinion, the most overused and under-delivered dynamic with respect to clients, is this notion of partnership. Clients love throwing that word around. because they want you to feel like an equal to them. But very seldom do they actually behave and offer the actions and behaviors that are commensurate with the word partnership. Deadlines, awards, advocacy, decision-making, the politics of hierarchy and levels, functional priorities. Supply chain is different than finance, is different than marketing, is different than regulatory. All of these functional priorities drive a certain set of behaviors and the way the enterprise interacts. Okay, so what? A lot of that was context for what I want to share with you about the impact of this notion of rewards drive behavior. And so the other areas that this impacts you as agencies is how clients see you, and in a great degree how you show up to agencies. So there's this prevalent question that you try to answer for yourselves proactively before you walk into a prospect, and then ultimately either the client asks why we should hire you, or you ask why you as a client should partner with us. And the reality is almost every agency uses some form of "we're different because." But usually what follows the word "because" is the same stuff that virtually every other agency is sharing. There's thankfully this is a webinar and I can't see you all, and I can't see heads nodding and nervous laughter, but this notion of we get it, we over deliver, I always, when I hear that from an agency, I ask, have you ever told somebody that you under deliver? What else would you tell them? This notion that we've been there before, clients love us, we're experts, we have a cool office, a chef, an office dog, we speak languages, we ride bikes, whatever those things are. The challenge becomes most agencies show up saying the same things that most other agencies say. And part of it is you're not taking into account what's important to that client or important to that client in that moment. And you're also not taking a good candid look in the mirror about who you really are as an agency. This is kind of an overly simplified capability presentation that from the lens of a client, that this is about me, us, a former client, us, they, our competition, us, and finally near the end of the presentation, they talk about the client. What's important to you? What keeps you up at night? How might we start a relationship? And a lot of these things are focused on features and benefits, and ultimately create a sea of sameness. And where the marketplace looks and feels the same, price becomes the differentiator. So you're not necessarily doing yourself a favor by looking and sounding like everybody else. And so I want to share some observations. I've had the luxury of interfacing and exploring and assessing almost 1,000 agencies. And what I found is 92.7% of these agencies say the same 7 things. They offer this notion of we're different because our people. There's some aspect of our people being unique and different in an industry that has 40 to 60% turnover. So your people were someone else's people last week, and they might be someone else's people next week. And so this notion of our people are somehow a point of difference rings a bit untrue or non-resonant with clients. The other is this notion of everybody has a proprietary process. Whatever that looks like, I've trademarked it, I've service marked it, I've registered it, I've copyrighted it, but there's something unique and special, but yet the reality is most processes are pretty similar. The notion of we've worked with the most recognized brands in the world. A page like this, in my own personal opinion, I call it the single most misleading thing that agencies show clients, because it doesn't say what you did with any of them, when you did it, how long you did it, whether they liked it, whether that it was in the existing enterprise, or these were clients that all of your people have worked with in their careers. Yes, I've heard lots and lots of agencies share these kinds of things and talk about the client relationships occurred before they joined this agency, and yet somehow they've captured it as the work they've done with these clients as a part of that agency. The other thing that I see a lot of is this notion of trying to articulate what we do and how we do it. This idea that I'm full service, one stop, omni-channel, I can do everything for everybody. And as a result, it kind of creates this perception that there are no specialists anymore, and that everybody is playing in everybody else's sandbox. Everybody is screaming about how empowered they are to do everything for a client. The other one is our footprint, or our reach, or our access, or our influence, or our diversity. This notion of I can be everywhere for everybody, whether it's virtual, whether it's a series of alliances that I've created with other firms, whether it's the number of languages or countries represented in my one office because of where people have come from around the world. This notion of trying to appear big and appear diverse. One of my favorites is this notion of awards. Think about how many different awards programs there are around the world, based on geography, based on competency, based on output, based on segment, PR, promotion, collateral, website, web banner, web promotion. This is something that is extremely important for agencies, in part because it's a way for you to help attract and retain great talent. But it does not mean anywhere near the priority that you place on it for yourselves for clients. There are some clients that have established what type of awards are important to them, and certainly important to try to go after and win those for those clients. But if you're prospecting, don't presume that awards mean a lot or mean as much to clients as they do to you. And the seventh is this notion of somehow the differences in the experience. We've got a unique culture, or give us a try, that this idea of test driving us, because you'll see a difference once you have the chance to work with us. And I would argue, if you're unable to articulate your culture and unable to articulate your personality and what experience that a client might get from you, then I would argue that it might not be very unique. And then the other thing that I started to see emerge is this eighth component, that it's not exactly saying the same thing, but it's saying the opposite of two different poles. One is this notion of independence. If you are in an independent agency or an independent group of some sort, you espouse your independence. And if you're part of a network, you talk about the value of being a part of that network. And the challenge that I see with either one of them is you almost, most agencies that share these almost leave it just right there. We're different and we're unique and we're special and you should work with us because we're independent, period, end of story. And I have to tell you, clients don't know what that means. Clients don't know what being a part of a network means. So whatever it is you say to your client, whether it's I'm independent and entrepreneurial and I lack layers of politics or whatever, or I'm part of a network that has plentiful resources and infinite capability, figure out how those things ladder to things that are important to the client. And most importantly, this is where this so what starts to come in. Everything you say on your website, in your capability presentations, in your conversations with prospects and clients, everything you say, you should filter with the question, so what? And the answer to that should be, what does the client get as a result of this thing that I'm talking about? Independence or network, experience, people, process, holistic, full service, footprint, awards, whatever those things are. It shouldn't be, look at all the awards we've won, aren't we great? It's look at all the awards we've won and look at how relevant these awards are in your categories. And we believe we can help you move the needle in your business. So that's what this notion of so what begins to stir up. The reality, though, is, as I mentioned, 92.7% of all agencies that I've had the chance to go in and see, there is virtually no differentiation. There's this notion of a fairly famous quote, what a lovely grain of sand you are, too bad you're lying on a beach, and unable to see how these things might differentiate themselves. So a reality check. One of the things that I have seen is that as a result of, not because of how brilliant you are in your agency and how you might actually be able to deliver everything that you say, the reality is clients have been trained to be disappointed over the course of their careers and all of their experiences with all agencies. So no matter how competent you are in the ability for you to drive and deliver everything that you say, clients are going to have a bit of skepticism that comes with that, based on their total set of experiences. And so one of the things that gets me thinking about is does it make sense to fight and scream so hard and so loud about being different? Is there something that's more important than being different? And it gets me to a point about that I want you all to consider as you move forward in your businesses, is more important than being different is being relevant for who you're sitting with in that moment. So have you done enough homework to know what's happening in their business? Are you honest and candid enough about your own capabilities and your own experiences and your own expertise to try to drive a relevant business value for your clients? And as a part of that preparation process, I wanted to share a few questions that I love asking, either when I'm supporting a client to try to help them find the right roster with the right culture, or whether I'm trying to help an agency find the right client partners. The first question from a client perspective is, why are you interested in working with us, Procter & Gamble or Unilever or HP or Herman Miller or whomever? And why now? What is it about us as a potential client, and what is it about this moment in time that you're choosing to come see us? Think about how you might answer those questions, because they might be time dependent. And sadly, the most common versions of this that I heard when I was at Procter & Gamble were things like, well, because you're Procter & Gamble. And who wouldn't want to work with Procter & Gamble? And again, that's about the agents, the things the agency gets, not what Procter & Gamble gets. And why now? It often is something that's time-based in its immediacy. Oh, I read an article, or I knew somebody that worked, or we just hired somebody that used to work with Procter & Gamble, so that's the now. And again, not terribly strategic in the way that they're positioned as a way of trying to help drive this. My other favorite was, who are your top competitors? And ironically enough, it was not because I wanted to find out other companies that I should go explore, but I'm more interested to see, in what company do you see yourself? yourself? Do you automatically place yourself in a big, bold, ambitious space that has rock star agencies that you see as equals? Or do you put yourself in a space where you're clearly the biggest or most sophisticated among much smaller players that might not be strategic players? The reality is, again, among those almost 1,000 agencies, think about how you might answer that question. And I'll share with you the most common version of the answer to this question was some form of "we have no competition." They tried to position themselves with some unique combination of talents or experiences or capability or culture or geography or clients that they at least they articulated that they really didn't have direct competitors. For which I would often share a chart like this, where if it's an ad agency, I would say in the far right column, you'll see 2016. In the United States, there are 14,033 companies listed as ad agencies, and that's up from 11,000 in 1999 or 1997. More profound are marketing consultants or consulting enterprises, and this is becoming even more scary and prevalent as true consulting companies begin buying creative agencies like McKinsey and Accenture and Deloitte and KPMG and BCG and the like. This notion of there are 37,000 enterprises listed as marketing consultants as of 2016, and that's almost triple the number from 1997 and almost double from 2005. And so the notion of the idea that you have no competitors is astonishing when posed with this kind of detail and data. And so the reality that a lot of clients see is this notion of an oversupply of under-differentiated capability with seemingly infinite capacity. That there's no shortage of time or talent to be able to handle their needs. And again, this is an extreme view, having seen hundreds, if not thousands, of different types of agencies who ultimately all sound very similar. So one of the things I also wanted to share with you is this notion of what are agencies selling and what are clients seeking? And again, this is an observation that I've had over the last 20 years, is if the left side represents agencies and the right side of this diagram represents clients, the more sophisticated and larger the client enterprise as you move up that chain, the more focused and narrowly expert they want each of their agency partners, because they want to be the aggregator, they being the big client, want to be the aggregator of what they believe to be best-in-class talent. I want a best-in-class digital, I want best-in-class creative, I want media, I want promotion, I want activation, I want in-store, I want design, I want experience. Whatever those things are, they want to be the aggregator of that best-in-class talent, and it doesn't all necessarily sit in a network or a holding company. The reality is most agencies go to market with some form of breadth as a key component of what they're trying to sell. Some aspect of omni or full service or one stop that I can offer that, and they're trying to sell that into these trophy clients. And it's exactly the opposite of what most of these trophy clients want and need. One more comment I'll make is smaller and less sophisticated clients. There's an enormous marketplace for that, and quite candidly, a lot of times those are clients that you as an agency are more inspired to serve because they're letting you serve more of their business challenge as opposed to some myopic, over-the-shoulder looking, micromanaged subset of some larger business proposition. So my counsel to you is be relevant. Understand the business dynamic, understand what they want from their agencies, and don't try to oversell it. So again, getting into this rewards drive behavior dynamic, the other thing that I counsel all of you as agencies to learn how to do is learn how to say no. This is important because it's not just about saying no to clients or turning down potential clients, but it's pushing back on unreasonable demands, unreasonable timelines, unreasonable budget requests and demands. And how do you do that honorably, credibly, as a way of trying to show the client, and again, answer that question, so what? Here's what you get if I do it the way you want me to do it, client, and here's what you might get if we do it a different way. And hopefully you can show a compelling business driver for doing things in a different way. And the challenge again is this notion of rewards drive behavior. Your inability to say no, just like my inability to say no, is born out of fear and uncertainty and doubt and concern. And I'm scared and afraid to push back on a client because they might fire me, or they might not like me, or they might reduce the amount of work we do with them. But I tell you, what I have found is agencies who are good at saying no are more profitable and actually maintain longer client relationships with some of these difficult clients. So some final thoughts as we wrap up. I didn't get a chance to get into a lot of these, but the first thing is, as an agency, go be a great brand. Great brands are often polarizing. They stand for something. They're not trying to be everything to everybody. And they're not trying to chase every client and everybody with a budget. Great brands are trying to go own a large percent of people who have a strong affinity for them. And you insert great brand here. I happen to have put a Nike logo here, but part of this is, whoever you see as a great brand, think about how your agency might emulate what they do. And whatever that great brand is, know it, be it, own it, and live it. Everything you do in your agency communicates who you are and what you do. And think about how you have internal ambassadors. Think about how your client service group supports the mantra of the proposition, how your accounts receivable organization, when you're chasing payments from clients, are they also mirroring your broader agency mission? Know yourself honestly. This is something that I cannot stress enough. Know where your limitations are. Know about your ambitions. Know about your expertise. Don't try to oversell it, because eventually the client is going to see it. Just as importantly is do your homework on the clients and the prospects. This notion of not only, boy, I'd love to work with X client, but why? Why is it that they would benefit from an engagement with us? What is it that we can bring to the party that's truly unique and different, that might be able to help them solve something that has been unsolved up to now? An important part in all of this prospecting work, and I see it a lot, particularly from business development people inside of agencies, is you're trained to talk, to fill the void of silence. Stop and listen. Listen for what's important to that client, and then shape your story to be relevant for them. And this is part of that notion of trying to get to understand either the individuals who are going to be in your meetings, or at least the titles and functions, so that you can get a sense for what might be important to a VP of marketing versus an assistant brand manager, or procurement is going to be in the room, or quality is going to be in the room. Think about how you shape that conversation so that you can make sure you're hitting the buttons of the people that might be decision makers. I can't stress this one enough. Have a point of view. Stand for something, not everything. I tell you what, when I was at P&G, I gave a lot of credit to agencies that came in with a strong point of view about what P&G should do in a certain space, even if they were prospecting, and I knew they did not have all of the consumer market information that we had. If they came in with a point of view and I could see a line of sight for how they got to that answer, I had a great deal more respect for them if they came in wishy-washy or had no opinion at all. This question that you've seen me maybe not so subtly share, this idea of so what. Ask yourself, everything that I'm saying in my capability deck, in the presentation of my work, in the articulation of the insights and inspiration for my work, ask the question, so what? And the answer should be, what does the client get as a result of what I'm talking about? Not what do we get as an agency, or do we get credibility or credit for being smart. This is the so what is, what does the client get as a result of our people, our process, our awards, our experiences, whatever those things might be. Learn to say no. Again, can't stress it enough. And related to no, learn to walk away when the circumstances aren't in your favor. This notion of sticking in relationships because it's going to get better, or I'll make it up on the next project, or those kinds of things. You have a business responsibility to yourself and to your own enterprise. And how do you map that into the relationships you have with your clients? So with that, I say thank you all for your time. Hopefully this was informative. Hopefully it reinforced a few things, and maybe I was wrong and maybe it didn't, but I appreciate your time and energy. And I think if you're willing to stick around, I think we have some time for some questions if anybody has any.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for that brilliant presentation, John. I'm sure our listeners will agree that there was a huge amount of actionable kind of insight that they can bring to their own agencies. So yeah, as John said, we've had a number of questions come in, and now is the time, if you have any burning questions remaining, to tweet them at #AgencyExpertSeries, and we'll do our very best to get to them before the end of the webinar. Yeah, John, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. I particularly really liked your subliminal messaging of asking the question of so what. I think that's
maybe not so subliminal, David, yeah. But thanks.
I think that's obviously incredibly important. It's very powerful the way you brought it up. It's funny, it kind of made me think when you were talking about agencies differentiating themselves, and that great quote of "Your lovely piece of sand, pity that you are lying on a beach." I think it reminded me of Simon Sinek, who says, "People do not buy what you do, they buy why you do it." And yes. You alluded to that in the branding piece. You said that agencies should be strong brands and they should stand for something. And I think that's extremely powerful as well.
Indeed.
I also really liked your that graph that was really powerful, which is as the enterprise gets bigger and more complicated, they look for more focused and narrower agencies, whereas if they are less complicated and smaller enterprises, they look for agencies with a broad range of different services. I thought that was a very interesting observation as well that you gained.
Well, I appreciate that, and you're absolutely right. I think the challenge is as enterprises get smaller and less sophisticated, if you will, they don't have the resources to tie 14 agencies together and get them to play nice together.
Yeah.
Big companies often are way overmatched with seemingly infinite resources to be able to do that, although they all claim to be extraordinarily lean, even the biggest of companies.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. You're completely right. So yeah, let's jump right into the questions and answers. We've had a couple of questions come in from our viewers, so I might get to a few of those. That's okay with you, John?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go.
So we have one here from Carl Ordenberg. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he's speaking about this notion of giving free trials, and I suppose helping, showing the value of your services before getting your clients to maybe sign a contract, and delivering that service though might cost you quite a bit. And he's just wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
Carl, I have a lot of thoughts on that. So my first thought is I don't think any of you should be forced by clients nor feel forced to have to give away work on a speculative basis. I will say that, however, with a caveat to say, if you choose that this is part of your marketing approach, for example, if you really highlight this notion, the seventh thing that every agency seems to say is the differences in the experience, and you're unable to articulate it. If you want to show a client how you might go do something, then that is clearly your choice to be able to go do it. But the slippery slope that I have found, if you choose to do it once, you're going to choose to do it over and over again. And that becomes extremely costly. And how do you make sure you make up for that from a business return perspective? So the way I would suggest you think about that, Carl, is are there ways that you would articulate through case studies, through client testimonials of some sort, not just static words that you slap on a website, but perhaps you take video of some of your prior clients and get people to see the excitement and the emotion? Are there ways that you can bring that forward so that you don't have to give it away for free? Because that becomes a dangerous, and shame on any client that asks for free work, because that, they're not necessarily giving away their products or services for free. And again, some do for the choice of awareness, but that's an overt choice. So yeah, that one is a difficult one. I think the key is find your sense of pride, find your sense of power, and use those as a way to show people that you should be charging for the things that you're showing them, not just giving it away for free. And happy to talk offline on this, Carl, if you're interested.
Great, fantastic. Actually, on that, John, is there a way that people can contact you? Do you have any details that we can give to the viewers?
Absolutely. In the deck will be one of the last slides will have my contact information, and this is HubSpot has asked that I provide a copy of this deck for anyone who wants it. And then as part of that, David, they can share my contact information as well.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for that, John. Mark Jensen actually was asking, will they get a copy of the presentation? So I'm sure he's delighted about that. We also have Mr. Jack Silverman asking about, and this touches on your point about agencies having strong branding. And he wants to know, what is your opinion when it comes to agency branding, on the importance of agency names? And do you have any thoughts on naming an agency?
I would say, as with any of the work that agencies do for clients, naming certainly is an important component. The thing that I always felt was I call it sadly ironic, is agencies are paid to help clients sort these things out for their clients' brands, but they do a terrible job doing it for their own brand,
right,
and for themselves, and so I would say, as with any product or service, a name is a critically important component, but it's only a component. It's what does that mean? So an example I'll use, I had the Nike logo on that slide that talked about be a great brand.
Yeah.
And I often get questions from clients to say, hey, John, who's really good at getting us a great logo? And some even say, the next Nike logo, or the next, pick your well-established logo. And my answer to them is, I know lots of agencies that can do that, but I don't think you have the time or the money to get a Nike logo, because it's not about the logo itself. It's 40 years and how many trillions of dollars of reinforcement that Nike put into what that logo represents in our minds.
Right. Right.
And so to me, that's the more important part of an agency is what is your brand? What is your purpose? What is your promise? What is your proposition? What do you stand for? and then does everything you do reinforce and support that. If you claim to be a disruptive brand enterprise, does everybody in the enterprise, the accounts receivable person, the junior intern, are they all saying and speaking the same language to reinforce that? I mean, it's, to me, it's very simple things. You know, if the agency has somebody answering the phones and the receptionist, is that person reinforcing the values of what that brand enterprise stands for?
Right.
And it's the tiny things, more important than the name or a logo. It's are you able to follow up and be who you claim to be?
Got it. Okay, thanks, John. That's great. So I have another question here, and I suppose it's about the rewards driving behavior point that you were making earlier, and how this might lead to the way that clients see us and treat us. If we were meeting a prospect for the very first time, what would you advise in terms of how might we understand what might be important to them, what reward systems might be driving their priorities, for example?
I would start with the kind of the simple homework. If it's a publicly traded company, have you read their annual report? There usually is a section in the annual report. The first is the kind of the chairman's summary and things that all happen, kind of the story that's attached to the financials. The other part of an annual report is risk factors. Mm-hmm. What are the things that company sees as risks to their business? And if you're talking about a big giant global enterprise like Procter and Gamble, it's going to be a bit more milquetoast in what they say, and maybe a little less specific and less helpful. But if it's a smaller company that talks about currency hedges in South America or Russia or something like that, how might you help steer your story towards that? The other is try to find out who's going to be in the room, names and titles. And even if you just have the name, LinkedIn is a wonderful tool to be able to find titles and background. And the other side is I think most agencies have a great deal of experience simply watching junior marketers versus senior marketers, or procurement versus finance, and try to gear what's happening in that business. So an example I'll use is there was a large appliance company, global appliance company, who had a relationship for about 50 years with a industrial design and innovation firm. And the organization brought procurement in, and they were starting to sever a relationship with this 50-year design firm. And the design firm called the head of design, the chief design officer, and said, hey, has the last 50 years not meant anything? And the chief design officer said, look, this is 2008, at the beginning of the global economic recession. They said, hey, look, we're in such financial challenge. Procurement is running this company. So you need to figure out, how do you appease procurement if you want to continue the relationship? I'd love to have you on board. And it's those kinds of dynamics, as extreme as that is, that, hey, we're in a substantial financial decline. How do you shape a message around that, both in terms of how do you as an agency be competitive in that, but also how might you help them see something they haven't been able to see to break out of that financial crisis? Are all opportunities. Senior people tend to be looking a bit more long-term in the way they think about their business. Junior people tend to be box checkers on trying to look like they're doing a good job in their current enterprise. So think about it as you prepare your proposition. Think about how you might shape that conversation based on those dynamics.
Right. Fantastic. Thanks, John. Another point was that, and I alluded to earlier, was the point about narrowing your services as an agency. And you suggested this during your presentation. And I suppose one question that we had was, how might this help agencies? And there's some concern around, won't it hurt the agency by being more narrow than they are today?
That David is probably the most common question that I get when I suggest, and I'm not alone. I'm sure for those of you on the webinar who might have listened to somebody like Michael Gass or David Baker, they probably said the same thing: be more specific, be specialized, be focused. And the reality is, if you're used to casting an extremely wide net, being more narrow is by nature going to be extremely difficult, because you've seen your success based on this wide net that you've cast. The reality that I see, having been inside a client organization and responsible for agency relationships for quite a long time, one of the things I see is, if you sound like everybody else because you're casting a wide net and you're claiming to be full service, or you're claiming to have this broad expertise, which may not be expertise at all if it's too broad, you're in essence commoditizing yourself because you're sounding like everybody else. So you might see more opportunities and you might win more opportunities, but it's likely to come at much lower margins and less profitable clients or less profitable projects. Whereas if you're an expert, a few things that come in as expert. One is, if you truly are a recognized expert, you get to command the price, and it becomes less negotiable for the client. You become more profitable, and you're able to work in a competitive conflict scenario if you're an expert at something. If I'm a beverage expert or a healthcare expert, and clients see that you are, then you shouldn't be expected to have to sign away exclusivity in a certain category or a non-conflict space, that you might be able to work with multiple healthcare clients or multiple beverage clients because you are the expert. Whereas if you're playing a broader general market, you probably are more inclined to not have competitive conflicts and agree to those kinds of demands that clients offer. And again, in some degree, limiting your business for growth and expansion. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. The way I think about it is, it's the difference of a doctor being a general practitioner or a brain surgeon. Would that kind of resonate?
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, David Baker, if he didn't say it on the line during the expert series, he overtly says he's the brain surgeon or the heart surgeon,
right,
for agencies. That, he's not apologetic about the rates he charges, and he's very good at what he does at diagnosing opportunities and challenges, and uses that medical expertise as the exact analogy for his own business.
Fantastic. Well, John, we're actually just coming up in time, and I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to bring us through your presentation. I know that I really enjoyed it, and I think I can speak for our viewers and listeners that there's a lot of stuff in there that they can all take away to their own businesses and agencies. So yeah, thank you so much for bringing it through us.
Well, I'm honored to have been asked to be a part of this, and hopefully some of this resonates with some people, and hopefully it allows you all to run better businesses and create better experiences and relationships with your clients. Thank you all.
Absolutely. And if anyone has any further questions, please feel free to tweet them at #AgencyExpertSeries. You can tweet John. If you go to that hashtag, you can find him, or myself. My name is David Murray. You can tweet us any questions that you might have. And we're going to be hosting another episode of this series on the 23rd of November with Aleda Solis, who's going to be speaking about SEO consulting for agencies, best practices, and she's going to be sharing some steps and tips to improve your operations and consultations. So John, thanks so much again.
Thanks all.
Thank you very much to everybody who's viewing today, and we'll see you next time.
Indeed. Thanks for your time, everyone. Cheers.